Hello, I'm Daniel Weiss, your host, and you are listening to my podcast. If you are new to this podcast, my aim is to give you the insight so you learn how to master your mind and optimize your health for the peak performance that is sustainable. I'm really honored and it's my pleasure to welcome Airek Dilley in today's episode, and I'm happy that he accepted my podcast to share with you his empowering story. Not only inspiring but empowering, because Airek Dilley is a recovering addict who took power into his own hands. He had enough and he turned his life around. And that is especially important because sometimes we think that our life is very hard or the things that happens to us are not fair and we have our share of regrets, but that is only because of our point of reference. And if we live a life that is too comfortable and something that is out of our comfort zone happens, which might be just slightly discomfortable, we consider it to be hard. We start putting this kind of label on it, and objectively speaking, it might be just really a little bit discomfortable thing. Especially when we compare it to somebody like Airek who went through hell, as you will be able to hear during this podcast episode, during this interview. And if you can relate to some of his pain through this story as he's explaining, as he's telling his story, you will be able to maybe make or create a different point of view at your own life. Like, your own problems might start seeing very small in comparison to his. And that is actually the point of this interview. This is what I especially appreciate about this episode. So without further ado, this is Airek Dilley, recovering addict, and sharing his empowering story with you.
As I said previously, I know you're from OCR based. You're an OCR athlete, but let's just start by introducing yourself with a few warm words.
Introducing myself from birth?
Yeah, definitely. How do you define yourself as a person besides having a sense of humor?
Yeah, well, I normally start by telling people I'm a recovering addict because that took a huge part of my life. And especially, in my hometown where you're kind of known for all that bad stuff that you're doing and that reputation. And when you can Google someone's mugshot so easily nowadays, it was just kind of been a necessity to say, hey, my name's Airek, and just let you know I'm a recovering addict. And I've done a lot of bad things. And so there's that portion of me. But I've been clean since December 28th, 2013. I have a 5-year-old daughter, man. A 5-month-old daughter. She's super cool. So that's like the newest thing happening in my life right now.
That sounds great. With the daughter. It also sounds like you own the thing about your recovery, and this is why actually inspires to invite you in, because you definitely post a lot of things about your recovery, and I believe that people can learn from you from that perspective. I would allow you to speak more about that, because I think many people they don't need to be like addicts, or we have all some kind of addiction, I would say, but from that perspective I think that they can learn a lot.
Yeah, no problem. So I was raised in church, so I don't know if you've heard of Jehovah's Witness, but that's really where I kind of developed like a moral foundation of right and wrong and honesty and everything, but it was also very sheltered. So as soon as I kind of got a whiff of the real world, I really kind of dove in head first. I mean, it wasn't like a kind of dove in head first. I did dive in head first. And so all the partying started taking place after when I started playing football and getting involved in school sports and hanging out with people outside of the church. And the drinking, when it kind of stopped, stopped being just drinking. When I was a senior in high school, I started doing a little bit of coke here, and social using. And after high school, they went to college, and I never really wanted to go to college. I was good at playing football, but I told the coaches that I just had no desire to go. And so the only people that were kind of left was the people that partied. And so I kept partying, and I held on for a little bit, I held on for a little bit. But so like it went from, like I was saying, like the social using, right? And it was a little bit of cocaine here, a little bit of mushrooms there. I did a lot of ecstasy, but things didn't really start getting out of hand until pills. Like when I had my son, we were drinking all the time and partying and going out different places, and our whole life kind of took this shift where we were now supposed to stay inside and we weren't going out as much, but we still had that we want to do stuff mentality, and watching TV wasn't really doing anything. But if we did pills while we watched TV, now we're doing something. And that's kind of where it started. Well, it's funny how habits work, right? Because habits, they start innocent, they start small, and then they grow. And they continue to grow until especially for me, until it just got totally out of hand. So I started selling pills, and all my decisions started being based around getting and selling more pills. Even I could rationalize it and say I was joining school because I wanted to do good for my life, but it was really just getting everyone else to validate me and say, good job, Airek, because when it came down to it, I was really just going to school because I wanted to get this check and I wanted to have more time. So the pills kind of grew into heroin. Well, it did. I was selling so many pills and got paranoid, and all my friends became clients, and then I was very quickly becoming more and more isolated. Once I started doing heroin, my son was about 3 years old at the time. It didn't take very long before I started making some really bad decisions. And the worst decision I ever made, Daniel, was when I don't know if you believe in God, but I think that when we reflect into our past, we can see almost like a systematic design of our life. But if you go through life without ever reflecting, you might miss it. And so during this time of my life, I was living at my mom's, and she lived in a trailer park, and I just spent my last weekend in jail, and I got out and I did a bag of heroin, and it was the best heroin I ever done in my life. Well, after I did, I was like, tomorrow I'm going to get 2 bags. So I woke up with no money in my pocket and no way to get me any more heroin. And I walk out to the car, and my tire's flat. Well, my car, my mom lives in this little town called Buckeye Lake, and the place that I get my heroin from is in Lancaster, so it's like a 20-minute drive. I'm telling you, I didn't have a flat tire when I drove home, so it just was flat out of nowhere. I didn't have a car jack.
Or something.
I have no idea, man. It was flat. It might have ran over a nail or something, and I don't know. But I ended up having to try to find a spare tire, and they don't have one inside the back of a minivan. You have to go up underneath the minivan, and then it had been sitting there so long, like it was rusted to the van itself. And I was taking a rock and I'm banging on the nut, trying to get it to come off. And finally, I get this tire off, and I realized that I don't have a jack, and I don't have any way to get the lug nuts off the flat tire. So I have to start going and knocking on other doors. I'm knocking on like 3 or 4 doors trying to find this tire, or find a jack and a lug wrench. And I finally come across this house, and it's got like every single piece of it looks like, I don't know if you ever heard of Sanford & Son, but it's like a junkyard in the front of their house on their parking lot. They got washers and dryers, they got bathtubs, they got cars half taken apart, and sure enough, he had a jack, and he also had a 4-way. So I was able to get the tire off, and I ended up taking all my DVDs into the pawn shop inside of Lancaster. Now, so all that stuff happened, and I ended up getting the heroin from my friend, and I put the 2 bags in my spoon. My son's in the back seat of the car. My wife at the time, she's begging me not to do this, and I'm being stubborn. Well, I shoot the 2 bags of heroin while she's driving, and the only thing I really remember is saying "dang." And I didn't even finish the word. Well, she looks over at me, and I'm like a water balloon. I mean, I'm like a blue. It's just blue, like ice blue. And there's 2 things addicts know what to do when someone falls out, and that's what they call what I did. And one of them is throw them in a cold shower, and the other one is to beat the crap out of them. Well, I'm in a car, so there's no way I can go in a cold shower. So my wife is hitting me as hard as she can across the face. My son's in the back seat, and she's trying to wake me up, and I'm not responsive. So she pulls over the car and comes out, opens the door, and I fall out of the car. And this is in the middle of town. Well, the neighbors had seen this happen. They had called the cops, called the paramedics. Paramedics come pick me up, shove tubes in my throat that breathe for me. And so it's making my lungs expand. Right. And when I wake up, they're rolling me into the hospital, and like it hurts. Like I'm trying to breathe myself at this point, and I can't. Like it just hurts so I have to let this thing open and shut my lungs for me. Well, that's when I stopped feeling like a dad again. They ended up I went to jail that day. My son went into foster care, and luckily my mom adopted him, and he still lives with her today. Huh?
How old was your son at the time?
He's 3 years old at the time.
Okay.
Yeah. And he went through a lot of crap, Daniel. He there for a while, he was saying, "Daddy's coming back to get me. Daddy's coming back to get me. He's going to take me to the house. I don't live here." And then there was portions of the night where he'd have night terrors and wake up screaming, "Daddy's not dead," because I wasn't around anymore. And he had to go see a child psychologist at a really young age because of that. He's grown up a lot. Well, I mean, my whole life kind of flipped over at that point, man, because where I was able to be a father, even when I was using, like, if I wasn't sick, I wasn't really nodding out because I had stuff to do. You just become functional using your drug. And so, like, I still, like, would take him out and spend a lot of time with him. I was kind of like, we were like he was like my little best friend. So we had a really good relationship. But when that all changed and I could only see my son after I got out of jail for an hour out of the week, I couldn't handle it, man. And then on top of that, they're telling me that I don't need my car because I should just walk around, and I should stay in a homeless shelter, and I need to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. And and I have to do all these things while I'm on probation, and I have to take random drug tests. And you can't. When forming new habits, they don't happen like that. You don't go from one extreme to the other without these extreme epiphanies, and the epiphany just never happened. It's like you cannot force an epiphany to happen on somebody, and so I struggled a lot. There's a point where you kind of like have to turn shame off because you know what you're doing is wrong, and you don't. An addict, at least me, it wasn't like I am consciously choosing heroin over my son. It wasn't like that, because I tried so many times to get clean. I just couldn't. I even moved to Florida to try to get away and get clean. I had the idea that, I was going to get clean and I was going to get a house down there and I was going to get my son back. And what ended up happening down there was I found out it was really just my fault. It's weird, because if you would have told me at the time that, Airek, it's your fault, it's nobody else's, you have to get clean on your own, I would have been like, yeah, I know. But it's like you have to have a deeper, that's like a superficial knowledge, but it has to be deep. It has to be within your soul, and it has to be like undeniable, right? There's no rationale to say that it's not your fault or it's this or that. It's the addiction's fault. And when that realization finally happened, I came home. I was shooting crack in the woods and in Tampa, Florida. My wife at the time was in St. Petersburg, and I always thought that we were going to get clean together. Well, she was miles away, and I'm still using, and that's when it clicked. That's when it clicked, because I can't be clean on my own. I can't blame her anymore. And so I came home. I did 5 months in jail, 4 months in rehab. And the thing that that changed the most was how serious I was about it. Because I was like, okay, it's done. Like, it was just that chapter of my life is now over. I'm not learning anything else from it right now. And it's no longer fun. And so I need to go to war, right? And so when I was in jail, I was like thinking that it made sense to me that a person is made up of a mind, body, and spirit. So I need to build my mind. I need to build my body. I need to build my spirit. And I spent every minute of the day, no joke, either in the Bible or reading leadership books or working out. That's it. If I wasn't doing one, I was doing the other. I was taking the book of Proverbs, and I was writing each chapter down with my left hand just because it was difficult, and I was trying to memorize it. And I figured if I can write fine with my right hand, I'm going to use my left hand. This is how serious I took the next 9 months of my life. And it was very symbolic. That 9 months of my life, once I got released, it was like I was born again almost. I was like a kid, like literally. Drugs stop the development of your brain, and they even can it kind of atrophies because you stop using skills. I stopped using conversational skills. I stopped using all these other skills that I had to relearn. And so I broke my femur after that. 6 months after I got out of rehab, I'm rock climbing, I'm ballroom dancing, I'm playing with my son, I'm doing CrossFit. Man, if whatever I could get, I was doing yoga, hot yoga, and I was rock climbing in Lancaster, fell off the mountain. Fell about 20 foot, broke my femur, ankle, and both my hands. And I had to go back on pills. But I knew what was going to happen before it happened. I no longer had hindsight. Like, I had foresight and knowing that these are the stages that I'm going to go through and trying to prevent it from happening and then watching them happen anyway. I dumped my dad said, Airek, you look the same as you did before. And I dumped my pills down the toilet, and that was it. I wanted to run. And so after I wanted to become a runner and run long distance, I kept trying. I went to therapy for over a year, working on my leg, and then a year of running after that to develop an aerobic base. And 2 years later, I'm able to run good distances. I can run fast, and I'm in one of the greatest sports that I think even exists, and that's obstacle course racing. So that's about where I'm at now.
Yeah, that's perfect, and thank you for sharing this whole story. I didn't want to interrupt you, but
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many parallels or so many ways where questions that pop out or popped out to me while you were speaking, and it's like, sounds to me like, that there are people who are more likely to get addicted to any kind of things because again, like emotional, right? So, for example, when we are speaking about, or when we speak about drugs, whether it's sports, exercise, it can be, like gambling. There are some people who have this kind of personality that they get addicted much easier than the other. So that's one of the things. And so for you, it seems to be like very intuitive from what I'm listening to, right? That you also took the responsibility, like you mentioned, like you reflected on that, and then you take responsibility for your life and decided to change it at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. That responsibility is huge. It's crazy because, Daniel, we live in a society where it's not your fault. Nothing is our fault. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can go to the doctor and tell them that, I'm having these thoughts, and they're going to say, okay, here's a pill. It's not your fault. You have ADHD, right? I stole a jackalope. This is not a lie. I'm working at Lone Star Steakhouse when I was a teenager, and I stole a jackalope off a wall and sold it to a guest for $20 or $60 or something like that. And I kind of forgot that I did it. And so when I was telling my mom about it, and I was like, I really just don't remember. I just was going so fast, I did it. And so they diagnosed me with bipolar disorder. And so they said, well, because you have bipolar disorder, now my identity becomes, my name's Airek and I have ADHD and I'm bipolar, right? And then so they give me these pills saying it's not your fault. Take these pills; they will make you normal because I am not normal. And that carries on, right? So I'm trying to self-medicate. I'm trying to do all these things, and that it didn't take until I took ownership of it. And it's not about the disease. I'm not Airek. I'm an addict and it's hopeless. I'm not Airek and I'm bipolar. I'm not Airek and I have ADHD. I'm Airek and I have these gifts. You know what I mean? Like what if addiction isn't a disease? What if it's a gift? And what if the reason why these gifts are taking control of us is because we haven't been taught how to use them? You know what I'm saying? Like, if we aren't taught how to use something, it will use us. If you give a kid a hammer and you don't teach the kid how to use the hammer, and you put him in a glass house, you don't think he's going to break a window? You know what I mean? Like, you got to teach him how to use that to build something. And so, like, this addiction, now I found that, I have a gift of hyperactivity. I have energy, man. I have a ton of energy. I have a gift of ADHD, and I can't focus on things that are not interesting to me. I cannot force it, right? You find me something that's interesting to me, I will hyper focus on that more than anybody else because I love it. I can obsess over it. I can think about it all day long. I mean, I have these gifts, and I'm learning how to use them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that is more powerful than any pill or medication that a doctor can just give us.
Yeah, I definitely love how you frame it and how you speak about it, because really the ownership of once we take this ownership of our life or our decisions about everything, it's just so empowering. And recovery is like the first step, right? Besides that, you also mentioned this, how you identify yourself with similar things. You are not like Airek the addict, but you are recovering addict, somebody or something else. And once we start to change our identity, it's like this is when the change, or when you allow the change to happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it sounds like you're saying, like, when we change our identity, like when we take ownership of it, then we can create something new, right?
Yeah, definitely. So yes, you stop identifying with yourself, with being this ADHD kid or whatever. It's just, by you are actually changing how you think about yourself, and this allows you to make or detach yourself from the victimhood of that and make the powerful decisions, different decisions.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I meant. And so now you basically got to OCR racing, and yes, you are a very, very energetic man. And how did you actually go together with OCR racing?
It started with a magazine. When I was in rehab, I saw some Tough Mudder things. I was like, man, wouldn't it be cool to have like a team of people and go do this? And then God kind of worked and led me to Doug and Aaron Brooks, who are the owners of Anytime Fitness here in Troy, Ohio. And she recommended to me that I get certified as a Spartan group training coach, Spartan SGX. And I always wanted to do OCR, and I told her about that, but I couldn't do it because of my leg at the time. So I was volunteering at places. I got my SGX certification and built a team together, and we started doing races. So that was last year, and this year it's more of a fitness side. So like my personal training has branched into behavior change and helping people develop constructive habits instead of destructive addictions, whether those addictions are being physically inactive or if it's eating too much sugar and bad foods, or if it's recovering from drug addiction. And that's my focus now, and I'm able to then just be an athlete instead of bring a team there. And that's got it's a whole different side to it, because man, when you finish a race and you just like totally like gave everything you had, and you reflect on it and you're trying to think, did I really give everything I had? Like how could I have done better?
I do love how you said you help people now to create a constructive habit instead of destructive addictions. And can you speak more about that, because I think many people don't understand this when it comes to also like exercise, because I was just speaking 2 days ago with one coach, and we were discussing this thing, like how many coaches, like fitness coaches, actually just throw workouts at you, destroy you, and people really love that because they feel like they are doing something, but it's not moving them forward in any way. They are just getting destroyed.
Yeah. So that lifestyle change, and you're exactly right. There's a lot of coaches, and I think it's especially newer coaches, when they first get into personal training, you kind of want to, people think they get a workout when they sweat a lot or when they're sore. So if I'm sweaty and I got sore, then I did good. And there's no periodization, there's no planning. But that's a whole nother side to what coaching is all about. What coaching is about to me is helping people become better versions of themselves, right? And I believe that growth is the sign of life. And if we stop growing, Um,
We are
as
dying.
long as we continue to grow and work on ourselves, then we're going to be able to help more people. So growing in the aspect of spiritual or mental or physical fitness, and helping people set small manageable goals that will grow, is the key to being a good coach, right? Helping someone uh, set those goals and milestones, and helping someone develop a self-validation and get their own internal momentum going so they can carry on their growth without you, right?
Yeah, that's a big difference. Like to grow and learn new things instead of being dependent on a coach and just get destroyed so systematically or doing something that doesn't make sense.
Right.
Yeah. So, but how did it lead you to basically? I understand how you relate with clients, and I really love how you also frame it, make it lifestyle. Should be these things. So, what do you think are the most important things that people get from your coaching? I think you will repeat yourself, but
Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, because it really varies from person to person. Um, some people uh, just really like the accountability and knowing that they're making those changes in their life that they should do and that are hard for them by themselves. And other people that I coach, uh, they want to get bigger. They want to uh, look better. So, I mean, it really depends on the motivations of the client.
okay. So let me frame it, the question in a different way, and that would be like when we speak about generally about like people who want to get fit, who want to improve their lifestyle, their health, like what would be your top 3 recommendations?
My top 3 recommendations. One, if we're talking about nutrition, is to eat for fuel, not to be full. That's something that I do personally, and it works great for me. And I think that a lot of people don't look at food that way. They don't look at it as this is our energy source. They look at it as this is a pleasure source. And if we can use food for what it's intended for, as fuel, and not like just to graze upon. The other thing is, as far as our mental health, is to keep learning and be curious. Don't be afraid to ask stupid questions and find the answers to those. And then reflecting on your own life and being brutally honest with yourself about, was this my best effort, or how can I improve this next time? If we look into our feelings and we're getting into emotional health, understanding that our beliefs and our judgments literally affect everything about who our character is. And so if we have a judgment and a preconceived judgment when we walk into a situation, then that affects how we respond and how we interpret the information that we're getting. And when we're honest with ourselves about those things, then we can change them to something that is empowering within ourselves. If we start noticing different actions that are destructive to the character that we're trying to create, and we can break that down into a belief that just isn't beneficial, and then find a way to reframe that belief or just get rid of it and establish a new one, and be constantly looking out for beliefs that will make you a better you. That would greatly increase, our emotional health, just understanding ourselves on that level. And as far as spirituality goes, I believe in Jesus, and I believe that his example is phenomenal to follow. And so, like, when we look at his teachings and he says things like, get rid of the plank in your own eye, and then you'll see clearly enough to get rid of the sawdust in your brother's eye. I mean, he's speaking on removing this hypocrisy from our life, and then we can help others. And that's what it's really about, is giving back, right? It's so easy to take, and the principles that he taught inevitably like feed our spirit, and that's super, super important.
Yeah, I love that. I really love all this, like, whole picture, how you paint it. Don't always speak or focus on one thing rather than on all of these things as a whole. And I think that it's really, like, very important for people, for anybody, for you as a coach to have this holistic approach to things. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And also, when you mentioned the, like, eat to fuel, not to be full, is it like, can you speak more about that?
Eat for fuel.
Like you mentioned that it's like how you view the food right now. It's very similar to myself. It's like a functional thing. It's to give you energy. It is there to give you, to support you, to fuel you, and you don't abuse it to do something else, like many people do. And I believe that many people really don't understand the food currently. And I think that, like, when we are generally speaking, it is nowadays more important than ever that we educate ourselves about nutrition, because all these companies are creating foods that are hyper palatable. We love it. They start getting better and better. It's like, I would say, like drugs for us. And it's also packages a lot of energy with it that is, like, in form of oils, or salt, and whatever. That is not really healthy for us in these high dosages. And if you don't know anything about it, you would just, I would just buy it, eat it, I like it, okay, and I will eat it all. So something like, some cake or something like that.
Yeah.
But once we are, yes. So to continue, this idea, once we understand the food, once we understand the nutrition perspective or the side of the thing, the eating, then we can start actually making different choices. Maybe start cooking for yourself, not using the processed foods and such. And yeah, that will support you much better in your life, in your health, your activities, and make you a well-rounded person.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And it affects your mood too. Like, I don't know how many times like I start eating different types of foods, like sugars. I'll go through stages sometimes, and like mainly ice cream. I'll have a little bit of ice cream, and then a little bit turns into like a week later, and I've eaten ice cream every day for the week, and then all of a sudden my shoulder starts hurting, and I start feeding inflammation in my knee, and I'm like, I have to detox myself because I let it get away from me, and I forgot about it a little bit. Yeah, absolutely. It feeds into a lot of different aspects.
Yeah, and also, there are some foods that's actually better for your brain and such.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so is there anything specific that you like, I don't know, nutritional ideology that you follow, or is it just you are more on the side that well balanced meals, or some people follow intermittent fasting, some people are like high carb and other vegan, some people are like swear by ketogenic diet and such.
Yeah, I think that it is true that different diets or lifestyles of eating work for different people. And I also do like the ketogenic diet. And that's something that I go on and off of. You know, man, it takes away like all your inflammation. You have this incredible focus and long-term energy. Has nothing to do with losing weight. It's just about being at a higher level of performance. And I really, really enjoy that. But like, for example, my girlfriend, she went to this nutritionist, and how it worked for her was she took her off everything and had like a very, very basic diet and slowly introduced foods. And then they logged emotions and moods that food gave her through the week. And so during this process, she found out that she's a person who needs vegetables and red meat in her diet. And like a lot of other stuff is just, it doesn't complement her as well as red meat and vegetables.
So basically, as I understood it correctly, is that they were logging her emotions together with the food.
Yeah.
Like how it affects her mood and such.
Yeah. As they introduced new foods into her diet, they would log her moods, emotions, and energy level.
Okay, that sounds interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when we also speak about pizza and such.
Yeah.
But it's a good approach. So, I don't know, maybe we can speak a little bit more about this also ketogenic thing. Like, you said that you feel like, besides being very good source of fuel for you, for your brain, it also helps with performance.
Yeah, it really does. But I think that I need to learn more about it.
Okay.
Before I could like really advocate for it. I mean, there's certain like symptoms from the ketogenic diet that like are just just fact. But as far as like long term, like being on keto for how long, I don't know enough about that. There's this book that I really, really want to get. It's called Fast for Fuel by Dr. Morsola. And he talks about how to become fat adapted and how that looks, right, long term, rather than just like the way I do it is kind of like a detox, and I'll do it for like a month or a month and a half, and then I get off of it, and then I go back on it. So it'd be cool if I could be fat adapted and know that I'm doing it scientifically in a way that is good for a long-term maintenance of my body.
Okay, because well, let me just put it like clearly, I'm kind of the guy who is against ketogenic diets when it's like a long-term thing.
Mm-hmm.
But well, there are some people who, like I said, like there are some people who swear by it, they feel good and such. But I mean, there needs to be more research done on it and so on. And for some people, it's too restrictive, for the other, not so much, or they don't feel restricted, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I did my research on that, and that's why I'm against it.
Basically. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm still looking for the new sources, and I really like to read the new research on these things. see how it's going to develop. But from the perspective that I have right now, it seems like you don't have any kind of performance benefit. And actually, I would like to know when you mentioned like that you love more like fat adapted. What it means to you? Yes, because many people they throw this phrase or use that phrase and they mean different things.
Okay. So when I say fat adapted, I mean that fats are your primary source of energy. So rather than using glucose as your primary source, you would be using ketones. But if I don't know how fat adapted it changes from the ketogenic diet, right? Because from what I heard, and this, like I said, I don't know for 100% fact, but I'm pretty sure that like even Atkins, like you start producing ketones because you have a limited amount of carbs in your diet, so you can get ketones from either proteins or fats. But yeah, it just kind of makes sense to me. Like what's intriguing is, you get 9 calories per gram of fat, right? And so essentially I could eat less. And eating is like it's a chore for me. I have to eat so much and so often.
Yeah, okay. It's very, very different thing that because many people, especially in the runners community, they think that by eating like ketogenic diet, they will never bone. It's okay. I'm high carb and I never bone, even when I'm running without any, food in myself. But that's just my thing. But but besides that, and we could speak about this like forever, discuss these things. But generally speaking, like you get fat adapted for burning more fat as a fuel, even if you have like 90% of the diet coming from carbohydrates. So you don't need necessarily to change the diet for that. So it's more a function of the training and of the activity level. Because if you are not sprinting, if you are sprinting, then you would burn carbs as a preferred fuel source. And anyway, so I would just like to wrap this up. I really would like to thank you for all that you have shared.
Yeah, I appreciate you inviting me onto your podcast. It's great. Thank you very much. I'm happy to share my story.
Yes, I hope people will love it, and because it's very personal, it's very very different what you hear like daily. Because as we have this kind of people as our role models who maybe haven't experienced as much as you have, and a different kind of story. Maybe next time you will also learn something new about the ketogenic diet and such, and we can discuss these things.
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm not doing the ketogenic diet, I am a carb monster. So
yeah,
it's either one or the other.
There is nothing wrong with having like a high fat diet.
Yeah.
If it suits you, there is no problem with it. Just also for the performance, it's worth like OCR. Just simply perform better if we have also this glucose supply. And like stores. Better. Okay. So once more, Eric, thank you very much. I will post the show notes also links to your account and your coaching site.
Yeah.
And yeah, so people can connect with you. So having said
Yeah,
that,
absolutely.
yes, all the guys have a great day. Also, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the episode and see you next time. If you liked it, please share, subscribe, and you will find all the important links in the show notes or below video, however you got to this. So there will be also a page to subscribe, my Facebook page, my website, and if you are looking for a coach or coaching experience, you are looking to boost your performance, whether it's mental or physical, to the next level, then go to my website that is linked down below and contact me through there.